Hi everyone. Hi guys. Welcome to a really special episode of Chat with Nat. I am so excited. I have with me Nolizwe Mhlaba, a lady who I admire, that I've been admiring from far, that I've been watching. And yeah, like she does so many things, so many creative endeavors that we're going to talk about, creating communities here and there. She's one of the questions that I asked her before we hit press on record is, where in the world are you? Because Nolizwe is always all over the world. And she's really someone that I'm interested in her journey, and I know that you will be too. So I know I haven't said a lot about what exactly she does, because we're going to sort of unpack that as we go on. But first of all, hi Nolizwe.
Hi, Nat. Thank you so much for having me. That's such a generous introduction. I think the admiration from afar is mutual. So really honored to be here and to have this conversation with you.
Thank you. Okay, so where are you? Where in the world are you?
I'm in New York right now.
Concrete jungle.
Where dreams are made of.
Okay, so thank you so much for joining us from New York. So I'm kind of okay, before I start, because I said, oh no, Lizard does many things, but for me the thing that sticks is like you create communities. If I'm giving a headline,
yeah,
is that the appropriate headline, or correct me?
I actually like that. I'm gonna take it and run with it.
Really?
But yeah, I think that's definitely a thread that runs through what I've done, what I do, what I gravitate towards. And yeah. And you know what, Nat, like to your point, we're talking about I'm always all over the place. If you think about it, my last name, surely there's something there where I'm being I'm being driven to go around and see the world.
Yeah. And for people who don't know, Mhlaba means the world, right? That's amazing. Oh my God. I've just had like a aha moment. Like that is amazing. Is that something that that you've thought about before, that you guys have talked about maybe as a family?
Not talked about, but it's just when you just sit back and you reflect and you're like, wow, is this like some kind of destiny, because it's like it's just always been a part of who we are, what we do, and yeah, who knows.
Oh wow.
There's power in names, right? So
absolutely, there is power in names. I love that. I love that so much. Okay, let's get into it, right? So how I know you, I probably don't really have like a defined like how. I'm pretty sure it was through Twitter and then like just social media.
yeah.
But the one thing that I think about when I think about you is Bhala Writers, right? It's a community that you've created for writers to come together, established writers, aspiring writers, just people who think that they can write. You don't have to be wanting to put anything out, but you've created a community where people can come together, do workshops, almost do book reviews. You speak to different authors, and I find it a really encouraging community to be a part of, because I know there are people that have put out books and like and so that's the one thing that for me, when I think of Nolizwe, I think of Bhala Writers, because it's such a community that I even have benefited from, just looking at your page and like just looking at tips and listening into conversations that people have about their writing journey and the like. So I just wanted to ask, what was I guess the inspiration behind creating Bhala Writers, and what is it?
Yeah, great. Thanks for that, Nat. So I think it must have been in 2020, sometime during lockdown. And a friend of mine and I were just talking about what are the creative outlets that are helping us to get through life and lockdown type thing. And we're just going back and forth about it. And so we're like, oh, writing is one thing. And we're like, oh, given that also with people retreating into remote work or gig work, we're like, how can this be an opportunity for young writers or writers that we know to like actually dig into or lean into that skill and actually use it, you know, to make money or whatever the case may be. And so we're just going back and forth. Initially, we're like, okay, writing as a money-making skill. And then I remember having a laugh because we were thinking about some official documents that came out from ministries in our home country. Maybe I shouldn't name names, but you know, where you're just like, you know, someone really was okay writing this and putting it out there, you know, like, where's the quality check? Where's this and that? So we're like, okay, we know strong writers. How do we bring people together where they can learn from each other, improve their craft? And yeah, you know, if you want to do writing as a career, what could that look like? And who can we learn from to do all that? So we just came together and we're like, okay, it can be a virtual online community. Initially, we were thinking it's just going to be women writers from all across Africa, but then it ended up being primarily women writers from Zimbabwe and, you know, a few other countries. But I guess given who we are and our networks, it was majority Zimbabwean women. So we're like, okay, let's just get together. It started out as we had sessions where people were sharing their writing journeys. And then we're like, let's have a weekly writing session where you're just building that muscle, right? So no matter where you are in the world, you just know that at 5 o'clock Central African time, there's going to be this community of people who are also writing something. So it could be your own writing, or there's a prompt that we've provided in case you need the inspiration. And that just became a thing. And, you know, from there was like an actual sense of community grew from that. And we're like, okay, how do we also celebrate the established writers, but also the up and coming writers? And how do we leverage social media to do that? And so, yeah, it became a thing. And turns out there were so many other, there are many writing communities, but somehow we were drawing these people who are just like, oh, yes, this is a space for me. So
yeah,
that's kind of where we landed.
I love that. What is the sort of maybe one thing that you're proud of, or that kind of sticks out when you think about, you know, the things that you've been doing behind the scenes? Not talking about the established writers, but the aspiring writers. What's the one thing or one moment that you think of and you're like, oh wow, like we've created magic here?
Yeah. I think it's when people would say something like, when we invite someone to be like, hey, come on an Instagram live with us. We'd love to hear about your journey. And they're like, okay, but I haven't actually published anything. And we're like, that's fine. Like, that's not the goal. It's really just what is your writing process? And so just having people who then would go through that experience, but then for us to meet new people who would say, oh, I heard about Bhala from this person. And it's, you know, like just the word of mouth behind it, I think was a really cool thing to see, because our marketing was sort of limited to social media. But like to know that there'd be people who'd be like, oh, you're from Bhala Writers. And it's like, oh, you've heard of us. So yeah, that was also really cool. And also actually, no, one other moment that I'm really proud of is just the caliber of established writers that we've had. Because you know how some people, they've gone and they've made it, and you're just like, how do we even reach out to this person and invite them? Because they're just going to be like, who's this random group, you know? But then they'd come through and they're like, oh, I'd love to do that. And then we just have really rich conversations with them, and seeing that interaction between them and audience or participants, right, in the workshop or the book launch was just really cool, because it's like you're literally it's not like 7 degrees of separation, but like you can create that access to people who can share their lessons and experiences.
Yeah. And I know there's so many sort of writers who've come on, but who's been your favorite or favorites, that you're not just limited to one person?
Oh my gosh. That's a tough question.
Yeah.
They're all my favorites, but special mentions, Sunyati, Spiwe Gloria Ndlovu, Barbara Nkala, the Barbara Nkala.
Yeah.
And then I've had like a few, I would say, well, Nat and Will Moyo, because it's like just different genres of writing, but people with just who along like through their writing build community and bring community. And yeah, those are just a few. And then the others where, we've had Instagram lives with, I remember I had a young woman from, I want to say Senegal. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking right now, but she's a former student of mine, but who's gone on and writes poetry in French, and it's gone on to be translated. And so it's like, yeah, anyone who comes through the Bhala space is a favorite.
No, I love that. And I will say I feel like an imposter being named in that group because like my writing is limited to like Medium articles and all that. But yeah.
No, but I mean, just to that point, it's such important writing. And I remember the piece that you shared, it was very informative. It was sort of, political, a political piece. But I just thought this is what we need. It's like we're celebrating different kinds of writing with different kinds of audiences. And yeah, you are not an imposter at all.
Yeah.
At all.
And I remember sort of like from memory that think there's someone, is it Nomsa Hazel, like part of the community, who published something or was part of a collection of a kids series, if I have that right. Is she the only one who has, or have there been other people?
So Nomsa is actually one of the Bhala founders. And for her, it started out as a children's story that she wrote during one of our weekly come ride along sessions. And then, someone saw it and they're like, let's make this part of this children book series, which is a really exciting opportunity. And I know there are others who have come to Bhala and just refined a manuscript that they had going on, or started on something and said, my goal is to get this published. So I'm blanking in this moment because Nomsa would have been my example of someone who then went on to get published. But I'm putting on my to-do list just to follow up with people and see where they're at.
And I know like when I've had the opportunity to log on, that people have put like, okay, I'm looking to write this, and then people give feedback. So yeah, there are some names that Nomsa was the only one that sort of came to mind just because of the book, because it was quite colorful. But I know that there's so many other people. So can people still sort of join if they're interested? And how can they?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have an online platform, which is bhala.mn.co. And that's where, people post articles they're writing tips, opportunities for writing competitions, or, writing jobs. But then we are also active on social media at Bhala Writers on Instagram and Twitter. And yes, please come join. It's a new year. We're trying to, get back into the swing of things.
Yeah. And I absolutely love the fact that like there's the writing opportunities and sort of writing jobs. So definitely, guys, like please do join the community. It is worthwhile. Highly recommended. And then keeping with the communities, right? I know that you co-hosted African Seoulmates. Am I saying it right? Seoulmates?
No, it's African Soulmates.
But how do you pronounce the city in Korea? How do you say it?
Seoul, yeah.
Oh,
Seoul.
Really? Yeah. Okay. African Soulmates, but the soul spelled like the city, SEOL.
Yeah.
Listen, I did not know. You helped me. I was going to embarrass myself. It's like, oh, great to see you, Korea. And I will admit I'm one of the I feel like I'm one of the uncool people who haven't tapped into K-pop, K-drama, anything Korean. Even when I go on TikTok, like people are like, oh, this is how the Koreans are doing makeup. This is how you should do it. I'm like, what? There's like a whole cultural takeover from Korea.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I am aware that like with your podcast you review K dramas, and I always thought that was so interesting because I always see like the comments and there's so many people who are like, yeah, like there's so many Africans that I mean, so first of all, like did you know that there were so many Africans that were interested in K drama, and how did it come about?
Oh my gosh. So I didn't realize just how many of us there are.
Yeah.
But I'm relatively new to the world of K-dramas, and the way I even got into it was again during the pandemic, during lockdown. My friend Melissa, co-founder of Bhala Writers as well, and Nomsa as well. Melissa was always on that K-drama tip, and she's just like, oh, you should try watch this before, any of that, because she and I used to work together, and sometimes, we just take a break from work, and she's like, oh, I'm just gonna go finish watching this episode. And I'm like, bruh, what's going on over there? And then it was like persistent, but gently, she's like, you need to watch. And I'm just like, I'm busy with my, I don't know, Grey's Anatomies and whatever. And she's like, I promise you this will be so worth it. And so during lockdown, again, there was just that, just, it's like, what do I need? Something different, just to get me through. And so I started watching a drama. It was like we did a Netflix watch party with a few of us. And then I was just like, wow, it's a whole new world. It's a whole new world out there. And then that was it. Like from then on, I was just like, yes, I'm all in. And so we were like, okay, because we talked so much about the dramas that we were watching. Every episode, every show, we're like there on WhatsApp. And I'm like, why don't we just start maybe a podcast? It's just for us. Who knows, if people will get into it. But at least for us, it's just again a creative outlet. And I love puns. And so I was just like, okay, soulmates, African soulmates. We're like, boom. So we went with it, created an Instagram page, and then it's like the people who are finding us and they're like, oh my gosh, at last. And then it turns out, obviously, new to me, but not to those who have been at it. People have been watching K-dramas for the longest time. So Nat, I don't know if you know, but in Zim, I remember growing up, I remember like in the 90s, sometimes you'd watch TV and there'd be these Chinese dramas that they would show like on Friday nights or Saturday nights. And I was always like, where's this coming from? But it turns out at some point there were more Korean shows being screened on ZBC and things like that. And that was also the case in a number of other African countries. And it made me just think about how, other people have access to, I don't know, Venezuelan telenovelas and things like that. And so, or like Indian soapies. And it's like, wow, there's actually a huge population of people who are watching these dramas. And the Korean government, on their part, have been quite intentional, quite deliberate about this cultural diplomacy, right? And so it's like getting our content out there, whether it's through shows, it's through music, it's through, beauty products, our food, all these things. And so it's like, wow, people are really, really tapping into that. So yeah, African soulmates came into existence.
That's amazing. I remember I was listening to an episode where I think it was Melissa who was saying how she finds it interesting that like with some of the K dramas, I think it was what's this cha I forget because I don't watch the show.
Hometown cha.
Yes. And she was sort of saying that there was this particular couple and then like they kiss. She was just sort of saying like the kind of like the physical touch and romantic aspect. It's kind of like there's no graduation. It's kind of like she's like they kiss, but you never then saw them holding hands or anything. And I was just wondering, it just made me think, I was like, oh, like do you kind of see similarities with African culture? Again, when I say, I guess that's too broad, but maybe the African culture that we know, like, do you guys watch it and think, oh wow, like we're actually quite similar in this way and that way?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's some themes, there's some topics that are portrayed the same and, possibly experienced the same to a degree. So you just think about family dynamics, certain topics that are quote unquote taboo. Where it's like, adoption or marrying an orphan or things like that, where you're just like, wow, it's kind of extreme. But I think with some of the dramas, they really, they're writing them and performing them without consideration for audiences from the rest of the world, right? It's more of a, we're doing this for our people, they'll get it. We're reflecting our society to itself. Whereas there are others where it's like, okay, we're actually trying to critique these elements of our own society. And sometimes they do it well, and other times it seems like they're doing it as a performance for others. So yeah, that's always interesting. But no, definitely there are some similarities where you're just like, wow, so
yeah.
okay.
Oh no, amazing. Listen, I am going to start watching K-dramas when I get some downtime. And I think I'm gonna start with hometown cha-cha-cha, right?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
But also Nat,
Yeah.
I think depending on what genre you like there are many that we can recommend. Don't just go with whatever you're seeing on Netflix, because I started out with these going by Melissa's recommendations, which were great, which was so good. But then I also discovered this other drama where it was just like, this is my genre. It was like a crime thriller, which wasn't really hers, but like I got into that and I'm like, yes, I want more of this. And yeah. So
wow.
I got you.
Okay. So I'll come to you guys and ask for recommendations. So if you're someone who wants, if it's your entry to K-drama and you're looking for maybe comedy, like light comedy, to kind of get you into it, is there any that you can think of that you would suggest?
Oh my gosh.
I'm putting you on the spot. Don't worry,
Yeah, I mean, there's one I would suggest, but I think they take it too far because it's a bit of a parody, and honestly, if you don't have patience for it, you'll never give K-dramas a chance again. But one that I would recommend, because it does have some comedy and they're like, friendship, really cool friendship dynamics, is Crash Landing on You.
Okay.
There's also, oh my gosh, why am I blanking? Because I have a whole list.
But anyway, people can go on African Soulmates, the podcast, and the page on Instagram to kind of check what you guys have reviewed to, to get some inspiration. So talking about the podcast, like, well, when is it back? Because I was like, when was the last time?
Oh my gosh. That's great question. We're sort of on hiatus just because, amongst the three of us, Melissa, Nomsa, and myself, just in the last year, life things.
Yeah.
We've been moving to other countries, people having babies. And so it's just like, okay, we just need to find our rhythm again. And so what we've been doing while the podcast is on hiatus is just continuing to engage with the community on Instagram. And, it's a very, very active community. We still post reviews or, do Instagram takeovers. People will come and talk about shows that they're watching and get to know others in the community. So but no, I mean, we're still coming at it.
Okay.
We're still at it.
Cool. And like I said, for those of us who haven't got into like K-dramas and all that stuff, there's so much that we can learn, and literally go on the page and listen to the podcast and we can catch up. So I'm excited about that. And then moving on to and this is, like I'm saying, there's this theme of like community. We talked about Bhala Writers, we talked about African Soulmates. And I guess the last thing that I kind of wanted to touch on was just about your career journey, right? Because I remember seeing a clip of you on CNBC. I was like, okay. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, okay, I like that. And I know you've been involved with the African Leadership Academy, and doing some work in different African countries around sort of like, I guess, empowering entrepreneurs, in different ways. I'm assuming funding is one of them. And I just wanted to find out a little bit more about that, right? Just about the journey, what you do, just as a lay person, and obviously people who are also listening, because I always think it's interesting, maybe especially for the younger people who are now thinking about, oh, I want a job, but I want a job that has some kind of social impact, right? That isn't just clocking in, that touches communities that I care about, that helps people that I care about. So that's why I was like, I really want to speak to Nolizwe just to find out, yeah, just what you do, and the journey to getting there. Yeah.
That's great. Oh gosh. Um, so I think my academic background is in economics and international development studies. And, it's just one of those where I was like, I don't know, I'm sure I can get a job with that somehow. But never really having a clear idea of what it is that I wanted to do. I think all I knew is I wanted to work in some sort of economic justice, socioeconomic justice, or economic empowerment space. And what that would look like is what I, spent several years trying to figure out. And so I worked with a bunch of nonprofits, did a lot of advocacy work. So I think a lot of that entailed just learning a lot about international organizations and sort of the role they played in the economic state of many communities around the world. And then just, seeking, it's like, what does it look like to exist in this hyper-capitalist society, with neoliberal agendas prevail? And so on the one hand, it was burn everything to the ground, but then it's like, okay, realistically, what does that look like? And so, so I was just always interested in how to connect at the individual level, but also community level, bearing in mind these realities. But then I sort of took a different turn and ended up in education. And so I taught for a few years at African Leadership Academy, and which is such a great experience because it's like, I have students from all over the continent. We're talking about issues that are affecting the African quote unquote condition. And that meant looking back at history, looking back at the role of international players, but also looking back at the role of our own leaders and saying, okay, what are opportunities that exist amongst us? What are opportunities we can create for ourselves? So it was always I miss ALA. It was a great time. But then in all of that, just always having a critical eye, right, to say we shouldn't just take our reality as a given, right? There are many factors that have come together to create this environment. How do we operate within it? How do we interrogate it and create better realities for ourselves? And so after some time in the classroom, I was like, okay, I do still want to work not just in the classroom, but like, what does it mean outside of that? So I went back to school in the US, and I did a master's in international education, which is great because at the time I thought, okay, I want to work with, I want to design education programs, but for, maybe youth who don't have access to formal schooling, or maybe it's working with adults and all these different things. So many, many different ideas. And I think for me, it was always like, just how do I keep an open mind? How do I connect with people who have experiences that might help to inform what I then do? And then, so for the longest time, I was like, okay, I'm going to go work for the UN. It's going to be great. Or I'm going to work for these big international NGOs. But then being in the US, for those who have been international students in the US, you know how challenging it can be to get a work permit afterwards. So it's like I was interviewing for all these jobs and everyone's like, oh my gosh, great, you're amazing. And then they're like, oh, we're not sponsoring your visa. And then I was just like, you know what? There's more to the world. The world is bigger than the US. So I moved back to South Africa, and I was back at African Leadership Academy, but now working with a program called the Azinsha Prize. And, you know, the focus with Azinsha was identifying, connecting, and developing young entrepreneurs. And it was such a, yeah, it was a great experience because, you know, I got to travel to meet entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, and this was like, you know, 15 to 22-year-olds from around the continent. You know, like, what does it mean to be 15 and running a small little business? Are you in school? Is it something you're doing because you wanted to or because of, you know, necessity? And so it's like, yes, you're supporting them, but you're also having that you're zooming out, right? To be like, is this an indictment of our governments? You know, like, is there a lack of action there? What kind of support are they providing for young people? Should entrepreneurship be a choice or something that you're forced into? And so, yeah, all these sorts of conversations. But again, you know, it's like, these are the realities. So how do you make things a little bit easier for folks who are on these trajectories? Yeah.
No, that's interesting. So which countries did you work with? So because you talked about the Azinsha Prize, so I guess that's the identifying, you know, and connecting the young entrepreneurs. So which countries in the continent did you, and did that involve you physically going to those countries?
Yeah, no, so I would say it must have been at least 40 countries.
Wow.
But then I didn't travel to all of them. In some cases, we had local partners or other team members would travel there. But I got to go to Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, Uganda, Senegal, my favorite, most favorite, Senegal.
Why is that?
I don't know. It's such a so Senegal is called the land of Teranga, and Teranga I think means hospitality or something in Wolof, the local language. But it's like, it's so true. Like, the people are just so lovely. They're so nice, and the food is so amazing, and just yeah. And you know, I got to practice my French while I was there, so I was always just like,
amazing. Wow. So you've actually answered one of the questions that I had, because it was I was going to be like, well, you know, is encouraging entrepreneurship sort of like letting governments off the hook, because they're not really creating opportunities? But I think you answered it, because it's about, you know, working with what is available, right?
Yeah.
But did you ever find resistance from, I mean, you don't have to mention the countries, but like some governments who are kind of like a bit maybe suspicious about, okay, well, what are these people trying to do? And
no, I think a lot of it was just parents who are like, why are you encouraging young people to do entrepreneurship? Like, they need to focus on their studies so that they go on to become, you know, the usual doctor, lawyer, engineer, whatever. And so for some parents, it's like, this is a hobby. It's not a thing.
No, I can see that. And so if someone is like watching now, and because I think you no longer sort of work on that program, right? If I'm saying so. But if they're listening and they're like, oh, that sounds like something that, you know, I know a 15 to 22-year-old it's something that may be of interest. Is there something that they can tap into? Like, what are the cycles in terms of, you know, registering or applying and all that?
Is azinshaprize.org.
Okay,
they'll have more information there.
Okay. Oh no, that is so interesting. Nolizwe, thank you so much for your time. I feel like I've got homework now, so which is like the K-drama stuff, right? And I do need to like be more up to date with my Bhala Writers community because I haven't been. Hands up. And also I love like what you've talked about in terms of the work that you were doing at the African Leadership Academy. And hopefully, like again, guys, you can go on the website and just have a look because sometimes there's opportunities that are there, but we just don't know that they're there. But yeah, so Nolizwe, is there anything that you want to say before we bring this to a close?
The opportunity, Nat.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, there are many opportunities. I think as people think about career trajectories, ask questions, and it's never too early, never too late to start learning about some things. If there are young people in your life who are interested in, I don't know, something that you've never heard of, it's like, who's someone that you could connect them to, who might help, teach them or show them more. I think any opportunities to practice some of these things, we should start as early as we can. But beyond that, it's also never too late to pivot, to switch to something that you're really passionate about or interested in. And these are things that you can do or start working on even as you are on your current, path, right? Where it's like, okay, is there a course I can take? Is there, I don't know, things like that.
Yeah, no, well said. It is never too late. I think that's a word for me. I need to take that on board. It's never too late. But Nolizwe, thank you so much. And I will try and so if you're listening or watching, there'll be links to the different things that we've talked about, to the Bhala Writers, to the African Soulmates, and also to the Azinsha Prize. And directly to Nolizwe's, like how you can contact her directly as well. So yeah, guys, this has been an episode of Chat with Nat, and we've been chatting with Nolizwe. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.